Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we are bringing you a battle report from the flight deck of Tier 10 Premium American Aircraft Carrier USS Franklin D. Roosevelt. This ship has just been added into the armory for steel in update 0.9.9. And I really haven't had anything to spend steel on in a long time. Notice I'm not a battleship player. All those battleships in there don't interest me. So I took the plunge, I spent my coupon, and I bought this ship. And there is definitely a learning curve with FDR. She does not play like any other carrier. Well, that's not entirely accurate, but she does play very differently to most aircraft carriers we have available. So let's talk through what you're going to see in this game and what it is that makes FDR so different. Spawning here on the north side of Haven, I grab the rocket planes, like you do. But here's the thing, what I've learned, this is my second game in a random battle with FDR, and one of the things that I've learned about her rockets is that they are horribly ineffective for hunting destroyers. So even though I'm over here and this Marceau's AA is plugging away at me, the enemy midway is trying to lay fighters down to cover his teammate, kudos to him by the way, I'm not here for that Marceau, I'm here for this Yoshino. Yoshino's armor scheme is terrible for dealing with all these incoming rockets and everything, incoming light shells, lots of HE, and I'm going to put about 7-8k into him with these rockets. But you see there, if you're used to playing carry, there's a couple of things I want you to notice about that interaction. One was, when you're flying at altitude, that rocket reticle is like 5 or 6 kilometers in front of you. And even in the middle of an attack run, it only drops down to being 3.5 or 4 kilometers in front of you. And you saw how slow the rockets were to get on target. Using FDR's rockets against destroyers is nearly impossible. So guys, FDR is not a carrier in the traditional sense of what you're used to seeing them in most games. If you've played the new system and you like taking out your Enterprise rockets and hunting destroyers, man, FDR is going to be a gross disappointment because that is not what she does. FDR is a damage farmer. I almost liken her a little bit to Audacious. This is a ship that wants to hunt down, harass, and mercilessly farm the health of enemy battleships. Capital ships in general, but particularly battleships. And FDR does this extremely well. I grab the torpedo salvo, I come back looking to put torpedoes onto that Montana you see there. However, as I come around the island, the Yoshino has kind of stopped and is reversing. It makes him a very tempting target for these torpedoes. Yes, you're reading the reticle right. These two planes put 8 torpedoes into the water. Now, that sounds catastrophic. But the trick is that these are actually Langley torpedoes. These are the weakest torpedoes in the American aerial arsenal. Their alpha damage each is only about 4,200 damage with about a 30-ish% flood chance. Not very good on either case. So if you want good results out of the torpedoes, you need to try to land them all. Just from personal experience, and I've done some of this in training rooms or whatever, if you dump all of those torpedoes, you land all 8 into a broadside battleship, let's say, it'll be about a 20-ish thousand point damage. You'll probably, because there's so many of them, you'll probably land at least 1 flood. So with the torpedoes, it is really quantity over quality. But what I really love about FDR is these planes right here. These are FDR's dive bombs. Now, this first salvo you're going to see me take on this Montana, this is a terrible salvo. I don't get this drop off very well. But these dive bombs are the same dive bombs you'd get aboard Tier 10 American aircraft carrier USS Midway. These are the infamous 2,000-pound HE bombs. However, each one of these planes on your screen right now carries 4 of these bombs, and when you attack, when you go to a drop, you drop 8 into the reticle. So you're, rather than Midway, I think Midway drops 4. That sounds right. The alpha strike of actually Midway might drop 3, but either way, you put 8 into that reticle. Now, as you can see there, that's not a great drop because of how spread out that is. But however, when I start to do a better job aiming, you'll see some truly ridiculous hits out of these bombs. Something else you may be noticing right about now. You see the cooldown timer there for attacks. It takes, FDR's planes are forced to take a 25-second break in between attack runs. You see me here, I'm struggling to get the timing of this right. I'm really not doing a great job. But in the end, those bombs are so slow, the Yamato comes right into it. Triple fire, that was about a 20-ish to 25,000 point hit with those bombs. These bombs are really, really good. They're really good against battleships. You're going to struggle to land them against most other ships. Maybe one of these, if you have like stationary Russian carrier or something, Russian cruiser, like a Stalingrad, a big Russian cruiser or something like that, you could probably land some of these bombs. But trust me, these things hit really hard. They do a great job lighting fires. FDR, I think, almost probably even better than Audacious, and we kind of made this comparison earlier, will farm witherers like nobody's business. What you're going to discover is that 25-second forced pause in between attacks means that if your opponent, whatever you've attacked, your enemy ship uses their damage control to put out the flood, put out the fire, on your first salvo, by the time you're forced to wait almost 30 seconds before you're allowed to come back for another run, by that time their DCP is up. So if you stick a fire or a flood with that second attack, it's going to stick. They're going to be stuck with it for a while. Now, I wanted to come into this Montana from kind of the other side there, come in on his port side, but he was turning to show a bow to the Monty, my friendly Monty's here, they're on the 3 line. So I was like, all right, I'll come around on his starboard side. Well, then he decided to keep turning. And this was the turn I didn't expect him to make. I did not expect him to make this turn because I would not have expected him to want to show his juicy bits to an enemy battleship. Very commonly, I see battleships making plays like this, right? In their haste, in their desire to avoid getting struck by the carrier, they're turning to avoid torpedoes, let's say, and they show a much better shot to an enemy battleship, which is bizarre, but I see it all the time. That guy there still eats 4 or 5 torpedoes for probably about 10k or so. With a flood, has to put that out, and then he's stuck there. Now, we're starting to get to the point of the game where I'm really starting to kind of hone in on my goal here, right? The Monty is behind me, is in a cap. He's got lots of people shooting at him. I'm not sure I'm going to get much more damage on him. So for the next few minutes, my goal was to harass this Yamato. Now, this Yamato is a really clever player, okay? He steers, he angles, he does all the things he needs to do to try to dodge these torpedoes. And the bombs that I'm going to come back with him for later, okay? You see there, he takes 2 in the stern with a flood. He does put the flood out almost immediately. That's very, very common behavior for battleships. So that kind of goes back to what I'm talking about with the flood chance, the fire chance. Yeah, they're individually, they aren't great. Chances are, if you can get one to land, though, it'll stick because you're forced to wait and, in between attacks. You see me here, I'm having to loiter to let the cooldown on my attack run chill out. Then I'm looking for an angle. Come back in again. This guy's going to turn into me once more as I go down to the deck to put 8 more of these torpedoes into the water. And again, like I've said, individually, these torpedoes are not great in terms of their flood chance. However, you're putting so many of them in, chances are you're going to stick at least one flood somewhere. So having hit him pretty good with the torpedoes, and there is another flood, he's stuck with that one for a bit, I grabbed the dive bombs. One of the things we haven't talked about with FDR, okay? Every single plane on her deck is a Douglas TB2D Sky Pirate. These things are the tankiest, most healthy planes in the game. Individually, these planes have an obscene amount of health. And these squadron sizes you're seeing, she puts up 14 planes maximum at a time. Very commonly, you'll see enemy carriers or friendly carriers pre-dropping to salvage planes back to their deck. But you've heard me talk about that long cooldown timer on attacks that FDR has. That makes pre-drops not great, right? For starters, a pre-drop will only send back 2 planes, right? And it costs you enough 30 seconds of you waiting around. So if you do try to pre-drop with FDR squadrons, you have to make sure you're doing it like right after you're off the deck. I'm trying to now, again, I stuck a flood on that Yamato. He's put it out now. I'm coming back. I'm trying to get through here to get a couple of fires on him. At least one. The problem is that in my efforts to maneuver, I have not done a great job. These bombs are slow, but even that lead is too much. I'm barely going to clip him with a bomb and get a bow fire. So, he can't do anything about that one right now. He's stuck with it. And again, I'm forced to loiter out here for a while. Something else I want to point out with individually, again, all of these planes have just tremendous amounts of health. If you pump up these dive bombers, for example, each individual plane will have over 4,500 hit points. What that means is that as the game goes on, longer and longer, obviously you're going to have fewer planes available. But each individual plane still has a lot of health. So FDR is one of those, is a carrier where you maybe necessarily don't mind taking out an understrength squadron just because you have such, your planes have such a crazy amount of HP. This is another terrible drop you see there. And I don't know if you noticed, he had actually DCP'd right as I was dropping so that his damage control was still active while those bombs landed on his deck, and that fire didn't stick. So he's a clever one, that guy. 10 minutes gone, almost 11 minutes gone to this game. My team's done a pretty good job, and I've obviously got quite a bit of damage, again, because that's what this ship does. She's just a damage farmer, really. And I've moved down the 3-line a bit. That's the other thing I'm learning is that the plane, FDR's planes are so slow, you have to be a little aggressive with your hull position. Almost more than any carrier at tier 10, your planes are just not fast enough to come back repeatedly. You need to be looking for an optimal, a better hull position basically at all times. With most of my squadrons kind of sucking wind, I reached back for the rockets. These are not great planes, but this Conqueror up in front of me is kind of squishy, and I was curious. This strike is literally out of curiosity. I'm here to see what I can get on this Conqueror. I have legitimately no idea what to expect here. He turns in, or excuse me, he turns out. We put the rockets down range. You have to actually lead these rockets, you see there. But hey, 10,000 damage and some AA mounts destroyed. I won't complain about that. I mean, it's a Conqueror. This is crap damage because every bit of damage I just did to him, he can heal back, right? But it's just good to know and good to learn what I can and can't get out of these rockets. I've done some work in a training room with these rockets as well, guys. Let me tell you, these rocket salvos, if you get the opportunity to throw these rockets at an enemy, let's say a Hakuryu or a Midway, they will do big hits. We're talking 10 to 15,000 damage out of a salvo of those rockets against an enemy aircraft carrier. Probably not so much against an Audacious. I haven't run that test yet, but certainly against a Hack and a Midway, those rockets hit like trains. I'm bringing back an understrength squadron here. You see, I have less than a half-strength squadron of torpedo bombers, and I still have almost as much health as a full-strength squadron of Midway torpedo bombers. By the way, the torpedo alpha strike on these things is about 10% higher than Midway. So again, you're putting more torpedoes in the water, but these are the junky Tier 4 American torpedoes. These are Langley torpedoes, so they don't hit that hard. This Conqueror is going to turn in. Not going to get a great salvo there. He's going to steer into those, and I think I put one into the bow, so yeah, not great. You might be tempted, and this is something that you've got to keep in mind when you play FDR, right? You might be tempted to think, oh, look at all this plane health. I can just drive right through a bajillion enemy ships. You really can't, because what you find at Tier 10, of course, there's a lot of flak at Tier 10. And again, these planes are slow, they're not maneuverable, they're very tanky. But they will still eat a tremendous amount of flak damage if you do not plan your route and your maneuvers correctly in terms of when you're going to get in a drop. So yeah, you can bully your way through for certain attacks, but I don't know that I recommend it. The plane losses will add up very quickly because FDR planes have a really hard time avoiding flak. Especially if you're driving into lots of high tier ships, those flak bursts add up. These things are not maneuverable. These Sky Pirates, they tank a lot of damage, but they are not very maneuverable. They will not dodge flak well, and you will take pretty severe plane losses. So in the mid to late game, if you're trying to push home a strike that you really need to land, okay, but certainly you don't want to go driving into a bunch of ships early. That kind of rule of thumb plane carrier has not changed even when driving an FDR. So this turns out to be a solid little game in FDR, and as I noted, this was only my second game in random battles. It took me about a half a dozen games of mixture of co-op and random to really kind of wrap my brain around this ship. Hilariously, I actually had the very first game I played in randoms. I actually had an enemy destroyer AFK out and literally abandon his team. He was so salty that I was even playing this ship, completely unaware of the fact that I basically couldn't attack him, couldn't touch him, even if I wanted to. So guys, if you like playing Destroyer and you see an FDR on the enemy team, just know that he is basically largely ineffective against you. I mean, he might be able to spot you, right? And his planes are so tanky, he can just fly around and keep you lit. But his rockets are not going to be able to come in and just massively land a strike on you because of the way this rocket reticle works, the way the rocket lineup works. It's just not going to happen. He's there to blow up and beat up on big capital ships, and FDR does this very, very well. I might actually have to invest time in a full review of this ship. We'll see how it goes. But for the moment, guys, there's a quick look at what FDR can do, what she's capable of. Hope you enjoy.